Hey there everyone, today we're going to take a look at Black Ice, which is a cyberpunk-ish, neon-themed, kind of roguelite-y shooter-ish deal. Procedurally generated in pretty much every way, as in tons of procedural loot, kind of procedural map, and even little descriptions for the various servers you're hacking. It is very Tron-esque in appearance, and it definitely has a cyberpunk theme going on. It is currently, of course, as you can probably tell from the title of the video, in early access, but it has just received pretty much its largest update to date just a few days ago, the big 0.7 update that has added in a rudimentary kind of beginnings of a perk system, and a couple of new weapon types, at least one, the discs, I believe, as well as adding a nice glowing sheen to the game that was, it's even better than what was present before, as well as improving the performance and things. So, let's hop in. Go into my character, and here we are. So, this is the world that you are in, and you will be given a sort of random, just maze of servers. Every one of these buildings is a server. You are a hacker, and you are trying to hack the servers. Pretty basic, yeah? So this goes on for quite some time, and there are a few different sorts of servers, and as you can tell up at the top there, they each have different hack difficulties, which is going to determine the amount of time it takes you to hack it, and the level of enemies that are going to spawn to stop you from doing so. So let's start with a basic one. Let's do this one. Fairly easy because I am level 19, so a difficulty 7 server isn't going to prove to be much challenge. And this is what I was talking about with the kind of procedural descriptions. These give you a little, like, this is the bad thing this company is doing, so take them down. So, face it and use your hacking device to begin. You'll be put in a sort of arena, so if you step out of this, the hack cancels. It pauses basically, and if you stay out of there for a few seconds, it stops completely. And waves of different enemies will spawn, all with suitably cyberpunk names, including these things, which are called pop-ups, and the bigger ones are called cyber web crawlers, you know, like web crawler bots, and those are called scorporations, of course they are. And there's even these big shellfish-like things called Ghost in the Shellfish, which is great. I like the Gits bugs. Alright, where is it? There's one last thing. There you are. There we go. Whoa! And as soon as you're done hacking, the building turns, well, the server turns transparent and you get some loot. Whoop. The loot system of the game is in a kind of action RPG style with a lot of randomly generated stuff. So I've got this las gun, which has nothing to do with Warhammer, by the way, and a disc, as well as my hacking device and some other stuff, a heal, an EMP, which is sort of a big AoE damage and stun. There are summon abilities, so I have a tarantula, and a passive mod equipped in that slot. You also have a sprint ability, which can be dashes, blinks, and things like that, and jump abilities, which can be things like jumps, super jumps, charge jumps, jetpacks, things of that nature. The jetpack I like a lot because it gives you a lot of mobility, and you can get lots of different weapons. This is a machine gun that is explosive, so that's pretty cool. The itemization is one of the game's strongest points. There is a lot of just itemization in general. There are lots of little mods that the items can have. You can get rocket launching shotguns, basically. You can get explosive snipers. You can get like freezing ice shard shotguns, machine guns that fire lasers. There's actually quite a bit of itemization. I think there's still a lot that could be done with it. There's a lot that I'd like to see. But even in its current state, the itemization is probably the best part of the game. So as you saw there, you can hack multiple servers at once. You can hack, I'm not sure if there's a limit actually, of course, just as long as you can hack as many that are in range of you. But let's go with something a bit more difficult. Let me summon my little friend here. Now you have just a simple health system. There are health pickups and healing abilities, and your health is displayed over there. You also have RAM, which is kind of like a mana bar, basically, or ammunition, or it's kind of everything in one. Everything that you do is technically a program, and launching programs cost RAM. So you have a limit to the amount of RAM that you can use. If I just span this, my RAM will decrease until I can't use it anymore. so you gotta wait for it to recharge. Let's do a dark server. Dark servers have a kind of variable difficulty, and they're interesting in that they tend to have pretty good loot, but they also spawn invisible enemies, which can be kind of fun. So let's do that. Now, as you'll be able to see, these enemies are quite difficult to track sometimes, because they are completely transparent. You can just barely notice them. Probably shows up a little better on video because of the kind of color bleed from all the glow. But yeah, they're not that easy to see sometimes, especially when you're up in the air. Oh. But you have actually very good mobility with your sprints and jumps, and that's something that you need to take advantage of, because the enemies can swarm on you pretty easily, and the hacks get very, very difficult. So let's do a double-digit one. Let's do something pretty challenging. If I go farther into the forest here, here is a 19. I should be able to do this one. In fact, it might level me up, which will let me show you a couple of things. So in classic, oh good, action RPG style, is my EMP, the enemies sometimes have extra components to them, like how in, you know, Path of Exile and Diablo, your enemies will have extra kind of mods on them. In this case, you see the one with a fire above his head is a fire starter, which means that it sets you on fire for damage over time. The ones with the blue mist over their heads can slow you. Those guys lay mines. There are all kinds of different, various little extras. And of course there are the cloaking ones that can also spawn on normal hacks besides just the dark servers. And there's some more. There we go. You saw a bit more enemy variety there. That's pretty much the main enemy variety of the game currently. So that's both good and bad. It's interesting because the enemy variety isn't too bad for the state that the game is in right now, but I would like to see a few more. The ones I'm showing you aren't all technically. There's a couple of interesting kind of unique things, like the awful shark airship thing that instantly kills me, which I'll show you later. But let's do one more of these and I'll show you the level up system. So as you can probably notice, you gain experience, of course, from killing things. And you also gain a large lump of experience every time you successfully hack a server, of course dependent on the difficulty of the hack. Now, the hacking tools do have a couple of varieties. This is the Icebreaker, which is just a straight line hack. There's also the Lasbreaker, which is very similar, but it shoots a beam towards what you're hacking, and when enemies cross it, they take damage, which is interesting because it gives you a little more positional kind of strategy. But there we go. So let me level up and show you how this works. Every level you will get a talent point, and these are the current talents. They are percentage increases on your stats, so this allows you to make up for some of the gear you may or may not have, and give you permanent upgrades. So let's see. It shows you how many points you've spent into each category, and this gives you a complete handle on your stats. Got a lot of extra loot find. I think I'm gonna spend some on... I'm thinking maybe crit chance would be a good idea, but it is only 1%. I feel like I could make that up easier with gear. Let's do hack speed, because I'm actually finding that some of the later hacks take a while. There we go. Oh, right, and also, this, very recently added, as in just in the last update. At level 10 and 20, you get perk points, 1 perk point, and these are the current perks. They are large changes to how you actually play, basically. I got this one recently, I Expect You to Die, of course it's called that. It makes your lasgun pierce everything, so you can hit entire lines of enemies with it, you can even shoot through buildings with it, which means that sitting on top of buildings, if you have a lot of jump power or a jump pack, you can actually shoot through the corners and stuff to hit enemies below you if you have, say, a tarantula tanking for you. There are all kinds of perks here right now. This is, of course, very work in progress, as it says right there on the screen. And so there aren't a huge number of them, but the ones that are there are pretty major with the kind of differences they will give you. Some of them, like hard drive, actually have bonuses and kind of debuffs as well. So I'm going to use discipline, because I've been using the disc weapon more often, and being able to launch 5 of them sounds amazing. There we go. So I'm guessing every time yeah. That's awesome. I can actually Instead of having to wait for it to come back before I launch another one, I can have up to 5 out at once. That's going to make the disc weapon way stronger than it currently was for me. So let's try it out now. So I guess the next thing to talk about with the game is the longevity of the title. With this much random generation, replayability is always a focus of games like this. However, it is a bit more repetitive than maybe some of its brethren in the kind of rogue-lite-ish genre, and yes, there is a permadeath mode that you can enable if you want to, however, it is not enabled by default. And I wouldn't recommend it while you're learning necessarily, because that can happen. But it is, admittedly, a little more repetitive than similar games. If you take something like, say, Ziggurat, another first-person kind of roguelite-ish game, the perks, of course, in that game, there are a ton of them, and the weapon variety is pretty huge. Now, of course, this has randomly generated weapons, which can mean there's a lot of variety, but it also means that you are very much at the mercy of the RNG to determine exactly what you get, whereas all of the weapons in Ziggurat are, of course, handcrafted. So procedural generation has its place, and it has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages, and I think this game actually shows that. There are, I think, some very good points to be said about the way that this game generates its content. It makes some very interesting weapons, and the packs of enemies that you face can be pretty challenging later on with enough of those kind of champion types of enemies with different little bits about how they act. However, the game's random content engine can only act on what's already there, which shows a lot in early access games because in an incomplete state, that means that not all of the content is there to be generated upon, which can be a problem. But that also means that some little issues become larger. Like, for instance, the AI and the animation quality in this game is not its strong point. We'll put it that way. The AI tends to mostly just rush towards you if it's a melee enemy, which most of them are, or if it's a ranged enemy, kind of float sort of around you. As long as they have direct line of sight to you, they don't tend to move much. What that means is sometimes the AI freaks out a bit, so you might see maybe you have 1 or 2 enemies left in the hack that you can't find. They may be climbing up the side of some building somewhere else that you have to kind of look at the edges of the hack zone for. The AI does need a little bit of polishing up. And all that put together, as you can see here, that's the animation quality for the enemies kind of meleeing each other. Not spectacular, but that's obviously... damn it, I should have healed, I wasn't paying enough attention. That's obviously not the focus of the game either. The focus is very clearly its procedural content and, you know, hacking for loot, getting more loot so you can hack better stuff to get better loot to hack better stuff. That is the gameplay loop that you're putting yourself up for when you play a game like this. And the main focus of that, I suppose, is the content on offer, at least currently, enough to keep that loop interesting? And that's, of course, going to vary person to person. I personally feel that it's actually pretty interesting, because Cyberpunk is a theme that I love. I love stuff like Shadowrun, even when I was younger, and I definitely love the Cyberpunk aesthetic this game has, a nice little Tron theme, but there's a bit more, I think, that they could do with it. This is actually made by pretty much a one-man team, almost. The soundtrack is done by someone else. The soundtrack is awesome, by the way. The guy goes by the name of Super Duper Garret Cooper, which is a great name. That's probably his real name, I would imagine, yep. And it's a nice, heartening thing to see. A pretty solid game being made by such a small team, i.e. pretty much one guy. But I do have to say that there's a little more I would like to see. I think the kind of suggestions that I would make to help this game kind of go up to 11 is pretty much exactly that. It needs to go up to 11. What it has now is a really good, solid base, a nice gameplay loop, a nice loot system, solid gameplay mechanics that's not too buggy, and it's got a good variety of actual, you know, procedural content to discover. What needs to be added, in my opinion, are a little crazier things. New types of servers, for instance, servers that do something special. Maybe a fortified type of server that also spawns powerful but static turrets that you have to fight. Puzzle servers, you know, something that is an odd encounter. Maybe it even puts up walls around you and you have like an enemy maze. You know, different types of servers that could be very challenging to hack. That would be fun. I'd like to see that. I'd also like to see just more craziness in general in the loot system. Just more odd stuff for the procedural engine to hook onto. Stuff like extra weapon types that aren't currently in. Maybe there are new characteristics that weapons and enemies alike could use. Right now you have slowing, you know, things to set people on fire. You've got lasers, you've got mines, explosives, mostly like rocket-type shotguns and things like that. That's a really nice base. That's some cool stuff, but I think there could be a lot more done with it that kind of exemplifies these cyberpunk tropes of crazy future tech that doesn't necessarily have to make sense because it's in a cyber world. It doesn't need to make sense. It can just be fun. And I think that a game like this particular genre, this kind of first-person procedurally generated dealie, is actually a very good genre for that aesthetic and that theme to actually carry through to very interesting gameplay mechanics. You know, lots of cool weapons, lots of cool hacking devices, maybe a hacking device with some risk-reward to it. Maybe there's a hacking device that goes really fast that maybe even boosts your damage while it's active, but it ups the hacking difficulty by 2, for instance, whenever you use it on something. Something like that. I'd like to see some more risk-reward, some more crazy stuff, some more gambling and stuff like that, because that's sort of what Cyberpunk is to me. It's not optimal. It's weird schizo future tech that kind of has goods and bads, and if you're able to properly kind of take advantage of the goods, then you can overpower the bads. That's sort of what it's always been to me, and I'd like to see more of that in this. But what's currently available now is nice, and I'm dying horrendously during this because I keep taking on servers that are too hard and I'm not paying enough attention. If you want to know the ultimate goal of the game, of course, that is to hack that. Finality Incorporated. 100 hack difficulty. Not easy. There are also shops dotted around. You'll see the buildings that are solid are shops. They can, of course, be hacked as well, but I've never successfully done it because they are very high difficulty. I would imagine that the kind of home stretch before you go to finality would be to go around to the various shops and hack them to get the proper levels. But yeah, the kind of loot finding experience in this game is very solid. It is a very satisfying little base, and I'm Daddy Land Legs, really. That's what it's called. I'm buying it. Of course I'm buying it. And the general consensus that I've really reached with it is the base game here is excellent. It just needs to be built upon with some more crazy cyberpunky stuff. Some more interesting stuff. Because what's currently here is awesome, and I'm definitely not trying to say that the game is boring, because I'm actually quite enjoying it. But the repetitive nature of something like this needs to be offset with just lots of craziness. You know, games like Ziggurat do it with weird enemies, pretty intense boss fights, and lots of weapons and perks. A game with a lot more procedural generation in its weapon system needs a lot of interesting things for that procedural nature to hook into so you can get really cool combinations of weapons. That's basically what I would look for in a game like this. Also some more enemy variety and some more kind of what the enemies can do, special things. Bola en fuego, really? Let me, before I close out, show you the absolutely insane airship thing that flies around this and tries to kill you horribly. After I jetpack up here. Boop. Spoilers, there's loot on top of this thing. There we go. Now, where? There it is, the shark. This thing has a ton of health, as in I would never be able to kill it in a million years right now. I'm not nearly high enough level. I can do some damage to it, but it's got 57,000 health, and it kills me in one hit. If I let a single one of those rockets hit me, I am dead. And I'm gonna run a ram. Oh god. Yep, there it goes. So yeah, that's black ice, everyone. quite the interesting little thing. It's got a very unique style to it. I haven't really seen a game in the genre that's like this before, and I really appreciate its originality and its flair. It's got some great themes, and Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is awesome, and I just want to see that Cyberpunk theme taken farther and farther to the point of, obviously up to 11, can't stop playing it, another run please. That's what I want to see with this game. So yeah, it is available right now in the early access system, doing quite well for itself because it's getting some good updates and it is definitely being quite actively developed, and you don't have to worry about this thing being abandoned by the dev. He's obviously pretty into it, and he's done a very good job of continuously adding and fixing and iterating. So it's available now, $15 on Steam. The link is in the description below if you want to check it out. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.